Hello and welcome to another Divinity Original Sin video. This is the Hydrosophist tier list. This will be my final tier list that I do. I've done a number of these before and I've ended up altering them, so whatever I put here is what I'm gonna stick with until I die. So yeah, should be fun. Anyway, without further ado, so you can see on the left here we have unique being the highest ranking and common being the lowest. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So we're gonna start off with Rain. Rain for me is unique tier, just because of the utility it provides. It provides wet surface. It causes your enemies to be wet, reducing resistances, douses fires, reveals stealth characters, gives elemental affinity, all at the cost of like 1 AP and 1 memory, and there's only 1 Hydrosophist as well, and you get this from the beginning. So loads and loads of pluses that this provides. So for me, it is a unique tier. Like with all the skin resistances, they're in common for me. I think they're all pretty bad. They give like immunity essentially, but you don't really need that in this game. And on top of that, so you don't really need it, but then on top, it requires like one source point as well for it. And I mean, even that alone kind of like I find a little bit off-putting. So straight into the common. The 2 cryotherapies, so we got the standard one and you got the mass one. The mass cryotherapy, I don't really like these for a number of reasons. I don't like it that it only restores. It's under specific circumstances. With the mass one, you need everyone to get really good value. If you're not getting most people under it, then it's like, well, you're missing out. And yeah, just for all these reasons, like I don't really want to be spending a source point for this either. So I don't really like it, even if it wasn't worth source. But the fact that it requires source makes me just say absolutely never. Straight into the common. I wouldn't even touch this. And honestly, I wouldn't even touch the standard cryotherapy either. There is better options that provide magic armor and do other things that doesn't require you to have ice around you. So I think it's just really bad, and there is just much better options that you would pick before any of these. So for me, they're both in the common. Vampiric Aura and the Vampiric Hunger, also both in the common for me. Reason being, you just don't tend to need, like, the idea of it's great, you just don't really tend to need Lifesteal on all of your characters, or even one, to be honest. You need to be eating your enemy's HP in order to restore health. Just crowd control instead and don't take any damage. I mean, there's that. You can always, if you really want Lifesteal, you can always go some points into Necromancer. You know, if, you know, worst case scenario. So yeah, the idea of using this aura on all your characters and getting good value from it, you're just not, it's not gonna happen, and you don't really need to do it. HP is I mean, obviously you need some to live, but it's not that important. You'd be much better working on armor or whatever, not worrying about your HP so much. So for me, they're both in the common. Even trying to use this on an individual character, I just find it's not worth the AP. And like I said, you only start healing when you're eating your enemy's HP. At that point, you could be crowd control and they can't do any damage to you anyway. So for me, I think they're it's just the way the game's designed that makes these pretty bad. So both in common. And seeing that we're on a roll with the commons, let's put in Blessed Steam. Heals, I am ranking pretty heavily down. And just the fact that this requires 2 source points to heal, it doesn't, like I've already touched on, HP is not that important in this game. It's not even that good offensively either. So this is just a completely avoid spell together. And what else we got? We got Cleanse Wounds. It's another tragic spell in the common as well. Reason being, the range on it's super short. It does cleanse a few nice things, but it's just not. It's not that necessary. You want to be as offensive as possible, as often as possible. And you really want to avoid healing and sort of being defensive unless it's absolutely necessary. And if you are going to be defensive, you're much better increasing your armor rather than this heal. Anyway, this is absolutely pants, absolutely useless. And speaking of pants and useless, Healing Tears, probably the worst. Probably one of the worst spells in the game. What it does is that it basically, like, you cast a spell, and then when you move into teammates, it heals them. So it's no good offensively, and it requires you to move. It requires you to bunch or to heal them. Yeah, like I've already said, heals are pretty bad and unnecessary in this game, especially ones that require you to move and cause you to be close to your teammates. So this is just a common spell. I would say, okay, so we're going to move on to Arcane Stitch. For me, this is also a common. This one costs 3 AP plus 1 source point to fully restore your magic armor. Again, notice the word is restore, it's not increase the total. So it's obviously more useful than the Blessed Steam. But the fact that it's going to cost you 3 AP to fully restore your magic armor is pretty bad. When it gets later into the game anyway, the enemies just tend to be able to like one-shot your armors anyway, so this is kind of redundant. But the AP cost is super heavy, and again, I would much rather use something like Armor of Frost or maybe Inner Demon that has Inner Demon actually increases your intelligence at the same time. The Armor of Frost protects you from some crowd controls. That I believe to be a lot more useful than this. It's a lot cheaper and it's more useful. So in comparison just to those two alone, I wouldn't even touch Arcane Stitch. So again, common is getting extremely bunched up here. And it's going to be joined by Deep Freeze. Deep Freeze is a terrible, terrible spell. Why is it so terrible? Well, okay, let's think. It requires 4 AP. I think the range is pretty short. I'm think it's maybe like 8 meters. It's got an instant kill if they're like below 10 or 20%. I can't remember exactly which number it is, but they're basically already dead at that point anyway, so like it's no big deal. And the damage to AP is pretty horrible as well. So, oh yeah, and I've also forgot to mention that because it's such short range, you don't get the high ground bonuses as well. So there's so many bad things to this spell, it's ridiculous. One to completely avoid. Okay, let's turn our attention to the two other heals. So there's Restoration and there's Healing Ritual. Both are ranged and they're more useful than the ones I've already mentioned. They can be used offensively, which is obviously a good thing, and it's something that I've kind of valued in the past. But the harsh truth is that even though there is flexibility, and there is early games also, there is flexibility that they can be used offensively, but they do end up becoming redundant pretty quickly once you're able to get your offensive spells. So like once you get Corpse Explosion, Mass Corpse Explosion, Grasp of the Starved, Bloodstorm, these spells will never be used again because the damage just doesn't scale as hard as those other abilities. And yeah, like I've said, pure heals in this game are just not very good just defensively. So I would put these both in the uncommon. I mean, they do their own job in their own way. The Restoration is a single target heal / single target damage plus dots. Rituals and AoE heal dots. Not dots, sorry. An AoE heal or AoE damage. So they are useful, and they are useful for a period of time, but they just become outclassed that you just don't need them. So I personally think they're uncommon. Restoration will see a lot more use in the early game because there's a little bit more healing that you do, and you're probably comboing it with maybe Decaying Touch, so it does have that use, but it does end up becoming redundant pretty quickly. Okay, we're going to look at Soothing Cold. Soothing Cold is an AoE short range aura that restores a very, very minute amount of magic armor each turn. Lasts a good number of turns, so you can use this pre-combat. But remember, the keyword is being restored. It's not providing. It's not increasing, which is a big problem. Also, for you to get true great value from this, your whole party really needs to be getting AoE in order for your party's magic armor to increase each time. But it is only 1 AP, and I suppose at times in the early game, like it could prove to be useful / helpful. I personally don't use this, don't need to use this, but I would say it's somewhat useful and probably much more useful compared to some of these other options, and it's just really easy to use as well. So I'm probably being a little bit generous, and it's in the uncommon. But I think it's much better than the cryotherapies. I think it's better than the other options here too. So yeah, there we go. We have Cryogenic Stasis. You're not really going to be using this very often at all. Maybe only a couple of occasions in the game. The game throws shackles of pain at you, which is what this is really good for. So it just breaks that chain altogether, which is kind of nice. One fight I can think of in particular is the one in the Black Pits with Magister Jonathan, or... No, not Jonathan, sorry, Magister Raymond. Where there is quite a few shackles that end up going off. So it would be pretty useful for that fight. But the rest of the time, you're really not going to be using this. For 2 AP, it feels quite expensive. If you need like a life-saving skill, there's other ones that do the job better. But yeah, for the most part, you're not really going to be using this. And to be honest, even for the shackles of pain, like you can work other ways around it, honestly. But that was just my one thought of how to use this. So yeah, for me it's probably a common one, but there might be a few occasions where it is useful. But it's certainly not something that you'd keep on your bar permanently. That's what I would say. Okay, we got the last heal to go, and this is the Mass Cleanse Wounds. I really like this spell. I really like it. So it's basically the same as Cleanse Wounds, only it has additional range and is an AoE. So this can be potentially really nice, like if you're needing to be offensive and defensive at the same time, because you can cast this bad boy, you can do a bunch of damage to undead and heal and cleanse your party at the same time. So for me, this is quite a nice spell. Again, it has the same problem as in dropping off in terms of damage, but I do appreciate the utility and all-round potential of this spell. So I would probably put this one in the rare tier. Okay, let's take a look. There's a couple here I'm a little bit unsure of, but we've got Winter's Blast. Winter's Blast does 110% damage for 2 AP, and it chills. Pretty decent sized explode radius, but yeah, the damage per AP is above the average, and it chills. What's not to like about that? For me, it probably goes in the Divine category. And it's going to be joined by Ice Fan. Ice Fan, I believe, does 45% per fan. But what I really like about it is that you can split the damage and you can do a number of really good things with it. You can proc executioners, you can be efficient with your damage, you can trigger crowd control. Yeah, so there's a good number of things that it's useful for. So it's a little bit down on the damage in comparison to the Winter's Blast, but I find the damage is still good. The hard CC with the freeze, or hard CC chill. But the utility and how you can use your damage is really good. So for me, it is Divine worthy. And then the last of the trio. So you get Winter's Blast, Ice Fan, and Hell Strike, all nice and early in the game. So yeah, the trio, the triplet, Hell Strike probably falls in the epic position for me. Now, a lot of people don't like this. A lot of people see this as like a single target spell, and at times they're right. Sometimes it will be used in that way. It's very reliable, hard crowd control. The damage is a little bit less than the two others, and you can't really It's an AoE, but it's not like... It's a more awkward, difficult way to be using your AoE. It's like 3 very small circles, but they're all kind of stuck together and you can't get them to move. So what gives the Hellstrike its ranking for me? So it's ranged, you can use on high ground. It's hard crowd control, so naturally it's gonna have a little bit less damage compared to others. But it does 40% per circle, but the circles can hit multiple times. So it doesn't just hit 3. It can hit at least 10 times, like if you can position them correctly, at least. So if you're able to let's put this on. So you can hit this one at least 10 times. That's at least 400% damage, even if it's split across enemies. But that's the point. The point is, sometimes, yes, you're not going to get that much out of it, but the potential that you can is pretty high. And I think that's where people underestimate its power. So obviously it's not as good as the other two, but it's certainly not what I would call trash. So for me, it probably fits in the epic. Okay, Hailstorm? Yeah, Hailstorm. This is the spell that requires 3 source and 3 memory in order to use. I'm not a fan of it, I must be honest. It's kind of awkward to use really to its fullest value. So it drops down 20 icicles in a circle, a fairly large circle that. So in order for your icicles to hit, you need a really big enemy, or the enemies to be spread around so it's actually hitting. The total damage you can get if you hit every single one is like 400%. And when you're spending, I believe it's 4 AP. Pretty sure it's 4 AP for the spell. I could be wrong with that. It's 3 or 4 AP. But when you're spending that much and you need a situation to be so specific in order to get great value from it, I don't deem it to be worthy of using the tool. That is just how I feel about it. So for me, for everything that you put into it, the memory, the source, needing a specific scenario to get great value from it, I just deem it just not worthy of using a tool, and I would put it in the common. I mean, you could put it in uncommon because it's not useless like these other spells, but I personally just wouldn't touch this because everything that you're sacrificing to use it, it's not worth it. So it's pretty bad, but it's not useless like these guys just in here. So I guess we can put it in the uncommon. There we go. Okay, 3 more to go. We got Armor Frost. Armor Frost is fantastic. 1 AP, protects against some really horrible nasties like Petrify, Stun, and Freeze. 1 AP provides magic armor, so increases your total, which is great. It's really accessible for a lot of party members, as it's only 1 Hydrosophist. You get it from the very beginning of the game. It's just really, really awesome. Downsiding in terms of the game, it is a defensive, but it is a very useful defensive. So I think less experienced players will rank this a lot higher. than I would, but I understand that. I understand it's great value, but for me personally, like I said, it's always better to be offensive rather than defensive. So I'd probably put it in the legendary. Though I could understand if somebody wants to put it in divine, I understand. It's great value, great protection, magic armor increase, accessible. Yeah, this is a fantastic fantastic way to protect yourself. Really solid. What's happened to my music? There we go. All right, we got two spells left. All right, okay. So this one's called Global Calling, 1 AP, does 50% damage, chills enemies, and is a shortish range, but it's kind of widespread in how it works. So some real pros and cons with this one. It is part of a combo. The ease of crowd controlling is really nice at this, but some things to consider is if you're playing Hydro Arrow, is that if you want arrow, like an arrow surface for elemental affinity, it is something that is going to disrupt that, and you don't really want that to happen. It's not the easiest one to use, mostly because of that. But I think the greatest value from it is the ease in that you can crowd control. So damage is like 50% for the AP, which is pretty standard. But I think you're not really ever playing just a Hydro Mage. You want to be playing Hydro Arrow. So I'm thinking it's probably between rare and epic. It's like if you can use this freely and not worry about disrupting your electric surfaces, sure, I would probably maybe rank this epic. But because personally in my experience I have found that I don't end up using it because it's going to disrupt my electric surfaces, I probably would rank it 1 down. So I think it's somewhere in between. 50%, 1 AP, really good crowd control. Might be a little bit harsh, do you think? I think it's somewhere in between, a little bit indecisive with that one. Anyway, I'll come back to it in a second. So then we have Icebreaker, the last one. Previously I've ranked this a lot higher than it probably deserved to be. Just because the base damage is pretty nice, but in terms of its scaling, it kind of drops off because it doesn't actually scale with intelligence, which can be seen as a good thing and a bad thing. It can be seen as a bad thing for mages because, you know, they're going to be building intelligence and it's not going to do as much damage. But on the flip side, if you've got a character that isn't building intelligence, that finds themselves for whatever reason building some Hydro, they can naturally just increase the damage of this without actually investing any point into Hydro. But this does require a little bit of SEP. It does require that the surfaces in around your enemies are of ice, which is where Global Calling comes in. This can self-harm. Damn, that song goes through fast. So, I would say it's a bit awkward. I think the base damage on it is good. it's good. It just doesn't scale well with the mages. But then if you're trying to, honestly, if you're trying to use this with a non-mage character, I don't really see a point of actually putting that many points into Hydrosophist, unless you're like, you just got spare points to throw around. Like maybe like a summoner type, right? Maybe if you play like a summoner type, you've maxed out your summon, and maybe you'd want to put points into Hydro to make it work inside of a Hydro era party, something like that. So I guess I'd put Icebreaker in the rare, and maybe we just go Global Calling in the epic. No, that kind of feels bad. There's no way that Global Calling is one rank just below Armor Frost. Armor Frost is much better. And I actually prefer Hellstrike to these other ones. Yeah, okay. I think we'll go with this. Like I said, it's finalized. So, to recap, we have Rain in the Unique tier, Winter's Blast and Ice Fan in Divine, Armor Frost in Legendary, Hellstrike in Epic. In Rare, we have Mass Cleanse Wounds, Global Calling, and Icebreaker. Uncommon, we have Restoration, Healing Ritual, Soothing Cold, and Hailstorm. And then we have a long list in common, the Freezy Skin, Cryotherapy, Mass Cryotherapy, the Vampiric Auras, and the Hunger, Blast Steam, Arcane Stitch, Cleanse Wounds, Healing Tears, Deep Freeze, and Cryogenic Stasis. Anyway, if you've got comments or feelings about this, feel free to leave them below. As always, thank you for watching, and see you guys